Marching Band of the Dead by Chet Gottfried. They came into town along the South Road, stomp and echo, drag and slither. The one-legged marching band of the dead. Joel Granger and his wife Naomi were having breakfast in Pancake Village. "Naomi, aren't they great?" She looked out the window and frowned. "You have got to be kidding. They look like they were dragged from a grave, unwilling at that." "That's the whole idea. They're supposed to be dead, or at least act like it. Don't you see? They're creating a mood." "So what's with the foot dragging? Is that how the dead are supposed to walk?" Joel promised himself that next time he got married, it wouldn't be to a woman raised in Manhattan. Nothing impressed them, but he had to try. Their walk symbolizes strength and weakness. The band wanted a natural sound, so their instruments are made from bone, human bone. The theory is that they each cut off a leg for art, to have the bone to make an instrument. It's that intense. Naomi shivered. "I lost my appetite, thanks very much. Don't get up. I've appointments all day, and we'll see you tonight. Don't forget to buy a roast for dinner tomorrow. The Steins are coming over, remember?" She left the restaurant. Joel lost his appetite. Why did Naomi have to be so damn negative? He stared at the dozen band members marching past. First step with the real leg, stomp and echo, and then followed the peg leg, drag and slither. Most of them had flutes of various shapes and sizes. A few had drums made from human skulls. He'd drop everything to be with them. Joel had been practicing with his Hopi flute for years. How difficult could it be to play one of bone? "When are you going to kill her?" Kathy asked. It was her standard question whenever she and Joel made love in her small apartment. Joel didn't answer. Removing Naomi was a great game, but he wasn't in the mood for jesting. Today, murdering Naomi sounded like the answer to all his problems. He distracted himself by watching Kathy dress. Joel admired the efficient way she covered her beautiful body. From her black top to blood-red flip-flops. Kathy straightened and faced him. "The band's in town." "I saw him." Joel pounced on her, and giggling, they both sprawled out on the sofa. She became thoughtful. "If I had Naomi's skull for my drum, I could join the band. Her arm bones would be my drumsticks. You could use her leg to make a flute." Kathy had picked up her fascination for the marching band of the dead from Joel and bleached her hair white, just as the band members did. "Come on, Joel, what do you say?" The idea was tempting, but Joel didn't know how to begin. He had no experience in killing anything. Kathy put a serendipitously recorded CD of the band on her stereo. "This should inspire you." The music quickly rose from a wail to a shriek, reminding him of a gale ripping trees and a torrent gouging a graveyard. The marching band of the dead knew where it was going and proceeded there, to the beat of the march. "Soon," he murmured. Kathy went over, pulled Joel to his feet, hugged him fiercely, and bit his ear. "It had better be soon, or I'll do something." He hesitated and then asked, "You'd kill Naomi?" She shook her head. "I'll find a lover willing to do what was necessary to keep me." Noon. Joel was sitting at the bar at the Wayward Fox. His favorite pub which had dim lighting, deep shadows, and dark drinks. While Joel nursed an ale, a man came in and slouched in the stool next to him. Joel glanced at the stranger and started upon recognizing Frank Wentworth, the leader of the marching band of the dead. Wentworth was half a head taller than Joel and gaunt beyond belief. His eyebrows, crew-cut, and short beard were the whiteness of the shroud. Wentworth ordered a beer and reached for his wallet, but Joel stopped him and put some bills down. "Let me." "Thanks." Wentworth took a drink, and the two men shared a companionable silence. Patrons came and went. The band leader's beer was almost gone. He might get up at any moment. Mr. Wentworth? Do you remember me? I'm Joel Fairbanks. We went to high school together. We once played in the same garage band." "Really?" Wentworth didn't seem the least interested in their former acquaintanceship. "Who'd think you'd come so far in 12 years? I mean, you're the leader of a fantastic band." Joel took a long pull at his beer. "I'm in civil service." "Doing what?" Joel sighed. "Pushing papers, updating files." You'll get a good pension." "I'm not interested in that." Joel slammed his glass on the counter. "I want to do something important. I play a Hopi flute. You know, combining music with nature, like what you're doing." "That isn't what we do." "No, not exactly, but I'm getting there. Your band, you reveal nature's power and determination. I'd like to join your band, if only as a backup to start." Wentworth turned to face him. "We could always use someone new. But are you willing to cut off your leg? We have a rule about that. You have to play something made from your own body." "Come on now, that's not for real. That's PR. Not for a fellow musician. I've seen the band. Not everyone is missing a limb. You have both yours." Wentworth looked to the left and to the right. "Okay, I'll give it to you straight. We prefer it if you have an instrument made from yourself. If you don't, well, a relative would do. Do you remember my brother Frank?" Joel nodded. "Frank died, and in his will, he left me his body. My flute is Frank's leg, and one of the girls has his skull as her drum." Wentworth nodded thoughtfully. "My brother has a good sound." "I've a girlfriend who would like to come in. She would like to play the skull too." He eyed Wentworth. "I don't suppose you have an extra skull?" "I've told you it should be from yourself or a member of your family. For that matter, it would help if your girlfriend were dead. It's not an absolute requirement, but the other musicians would accept you easier." "That's right," Joel said bitterly. "No one takes me seriously, and you're not either. I have to be dead. That's a laugh." Wentworth shrugged. "I was giving it to you straight." "But why then are you drinking beer instead of blood?" "I prefer beer." Wentworth stood up and patted Joel on the shoulder. "We'll be hanging out near Doyler Lake tonight. On the western shore you'll see a black road. If you can get an instrument, walk down the road to join us." They shook hands. Fog drifted through Bowlesburg and cut visibility to several yards. Joel stood by his car and wondered whether he should drive to the supermarket or go back to Wayside Tavern for another drink. Then images of the marching band of the dead overwhelmed him. And what about Wentworth's icy hand? Could he be dead? How absurd. But whether truth or lie, it fit the essence of the band. Being dead or pretending to be dead. What a cool idea. At that moment, a horrendous shriek of rending metal and shattering glass rang out. A major accident. Through the fog, he saw a flash of red. An explosion. Joel shook his head. He was on the ground against the side of a shop, and deduced that the explosion flung him there and knocked him out. He groaned and didn't hear himself. Didn't hear anything. Why was it so quiet? Joel panicked. He was a musician. Then he realized the deafness was from concussion and should fade. He examined himself. His jacket was a write-off, and he was bleeding from half a dozen cuts, but was otherwise okay. Down by his feet, he saw a severed leg, complete from the knee down to a blood-red flip-flop on the foot. My God! Kathy! Could it be her? It looked like her flip-flop. Did she die in the accident? Joel became incredibly and insanely happy. He had it. Just what Wentworth had demanded. Joel had a leg of his own. He examined the limb to ensure the tibia was okay, and the bone was from someone he knew, someone close to him. Kathy and Joel didn't have an official relationship, but went back together 2 years. Some people couldn't even stay married that long. Did Wentworth set the explosion? He was in the neighborhood and left the pub right before Joel. Who could say? But Wentworth must have been nearby. Perhaps after the explosion, Wentworth saw Joel lying unconscious and tossed him the leg. Joel remembered him as being a great guy even in high school and willing to go all the way to help a fellow. And why not? Joel had tons of talent. Wentworth must have recognized that. The fog was as dense as ever. Joel didn't see anyone, so he snatched the leg and hurried to his car. Joel quickly wrapped the limb in an old blanket and wedged it behind the front seat. Numerous alarms wailed both near and far. Joel felt relieved. His hearing had returned. He was getting in when a police car pulled up alongside him. A cop opened the window, leaned outside and looked at Joel. "You okay?" Joel straightened and faced the officer. Sure, fine. Thanks for asking." The cop surveyed him with what Joel thought an unnecessary amount of suspicion. "I'm a little shaken," Joel admitted. "But I'm really okay. It's the other people I'm worried about." "Yeah," the cop answered. "But you better not try and drive. 2 people have already died. Ambulances have picked up 5 others who were seriously injured. And I don't want any more accidents today. Why don't you grab something to eat? Give the fog a chance to lift." Of all the times to be helpful, I'm only a half-mile from home. The cop seemed ready to come out, so Joel quickly added, I'll get a cup of coffee." Joel shut his door. "Do you know who was killed?" "We have to contact next of kin first. After we identify them. After we find all the pieces." A telephone message from Naomi was waiting for Joel when he returned home. "I'm running late and have to drive to Altoona. I won't have time to marinate the roast, so you better prepare it. Don't panic. I've already made the marinade." Damn. Joel had forgotten about buying a roast. He eyed Kathy's leg and thought of a farewell present for Naomi and his old life. He was joining Wentworth's band. What else mattered? More important, odds were she wouldn't be home to interrupt. He wasn't certain as to what Naomi would say, but knew she would never understand the necessity of his carving a woman's leg. He logged on to the Marching Band of the Dead website and found explicit directions for skinning, carving and shaping the leg in the developer's forum. To begin, Joel spread newspapers over the counter to minimize bloodstains. An hour of blood, sweat, and tears left him with a magnificent tibia and a lot of garbage. How to dispose of the mess? Some kind of burial in the flower bed? No, too obvious. Joel filled a trash bag with a choice selection of food rotting in the fridge and placed the excess of Kathy in the center. He carried the bag to the trash bin and calmly walked back inside. Who cared about stinking garbage? Sanitation workers would collect it tomorrow morning. He had to keep 2 slices of meat for the barbecue. Joel rolled each piece into a cylinder, tied it together, dropped it into the prepared marinade, and put the bowl into the fridge. Satisfaction flooded over him. He had prepared dinner and hoped that Naomi and the Steins would enjoy the meal. In his workshop downstairs, Joel followed the forum's directions for turning a tibia into a flute. Hours flew by, but at last he finished and held the treasured flute in his hands. The weight felt very comfortable. He compared it to his wooden flute, and the bone flute was better. All that remained was a test, and he played his new flute. His heart lit up. Joel understood what Wentworth meant by having an instrument from someone close. Every tone of his flute sang of the love between Kathy and him. Night had fallen by the time Joel was ready to leave. Naomi hadn't come home. He was curious about that. She didn't like driving in the dark. Well, no matter. It made leaving that much easier. He gathered a few clothes and left her a brief message. I've gone to join the dead. It didn't occur to him until after he was driving to the lake that the message sounded like a suicide note. The full moon gleamed over the black waters of Doyle Lake. Trees rustled in the wind. The band bus was the only other vehicle in the parking lot. He pulled in next to it and saw no one was inside. Clutching his flute, Joel wandered along the shore to the far side of the lake where the black road began. He walked down until seeing a campfire in the woods. He left the road and forced his way between bushes. There they were, 12 people standing around a fire. He couldn't make out any individual too clearly. The fire threw intense shadows that masked and mocked their faces. Some were apparently trimming slender branches. Were they going to have a barbecue? Joel hoped the band would invite him. He hadn't had anything to eat since breakfast. They all stopped what they were doing as soon as Joel entered the ring of light. The only sound was damp wood snapping in the fire. Spotting Wentworth, Joel walked to the band leader and held out his flute. I've done it. I've my own flute, made from the bone of the woman I love. A person from further back laughed. How sweet of you. I especially enjoyed the saying, woman I love. You never spoke so well of me before. Stomp and echo, drag and slither. A figure came into the firelight. A woman. His wife Naomi. She had a wooden stake instead of a leg, and her hair was white. Naomi? Joel felt his heart stop. What was she doing here? She despised the band's music. And the march step? Then he saw it. The blood-red flip-flop on her foot. The flip-flop? That's yours? She smiled. Shit. Why did these things always happen to him? Naomi wore the same shoes as Kathy, so he carved up not Kathy, but his wife's leg. That didn't make sense. The flute intoned love, and Joel and Naomi stopped loving each other ages ago. Or did they? Maybe they were in love, and he never noticed. What a surprise! They loved each other. And all she had to do was have a major accident. And lose her leg. Who'd think it would be so simple? The band members gathered around him. Joel admired the extent of their grotesqueness. Without having clothes on, each one would collapse into a pile of skin and bones. "Whose flip-flop did you think it was?" Naomi asked. Joel stood there. Should he tell her the truth? That he thought it was his lover's leg? But he was wrong, so wrong. How could he explain? They could start anew. They loved each other. The flute sang as much. Should he play to show her? Yes, that was best. He put the flute to his lips. She snatched the instrument from him. "I've been waiting for my flute. I needed it because I've joined the marching band of the dead. The alternative, as presented to me, was far worse." An insight choked him. "You're dead?" "That's right. Your girlfriend became tired of waiting for Mr. Lackluster to kill me, so she drove into me in the fog. She wanted the crash to look like an accident." "How do you know this?" The voice came from behind him. "Because I told her." Joel whirled around and saw Kathy. That was his nightmare, his wife and his lover becoming acquainted. "Kathy, why would you?" "I died too, Joel. Yes, I ran Naomi over, but then someone smashed into my pickup. I remember the explosion. Afterward, Wentworth collected me." Wentworth clapped his hands twice. "Both women have a surplus of talent. I couldn't see losing them to anyone else. But we have a problem." Kathy nodded. "The explosion shattered my body. Nothing could be salvaged, and I need a skull to become a drummer." Joel became afraid but managed to smile at her. "You wouldn't kill me for my skull?"
"No," Wentworth replied. "We wouldn't kill you for your skull, nor for your skin to make a costume. Perhaps not for your arm bones that would make superb drumsticks."
He studied Joel, then licked his lips.
"But we are hungry."